welcome back to Jeff Koinange live at the Villa Rosa Kempinski. What a guest we have on this Inspiration Thursday. Once in a while, I tell you folks, stories like the one of Ambassador Scott Gration are ones we need to hear. You may have seen him on TV or read about him in the newspapers and thought this man was just living a good life. But I tell you, it wasn't that easy. It's still not. He's still out there struggling, if you will. But the most important thing, he has overcome every hurdle that's ever been put in front of him. And he's still doing it, even now. Listen to this story. His book, his memoirs, his autobiography is out. It's called Flight Path. Great story. Son of Africa to warrior diplomat. I tell you, he's going to be signing it tomorrow. He's at Village Market on Saturday. He's at our cafe in Karen Sunday. He's at Westgate. Catch him. 11 to 3 on tomorrow and Saturday, and Sunday is 11 to 5. Or 1 to 5, sorry.
1 to 5, right.
Keep tweeting. Tweets are coming in very thick and very fast. At Scott Gration, at Koinange Jeff. The hashtag, Son of Africa. Governor 48, he says, I walked into the room and Barack gave me a big hug. Wow, I would want to hug a president too. Idi Achieng says, we celebrate you, sir. Tyrus Wayaki Thuku says, Ambassador Gration has a mix of a Kenyan and American accent. And a bit of Sheng, right?
Bit of Sheng, yeah.
Abbas Kalima says, I need that book like yesterday. Show up during the weekend. And then my good friend Albert Kigada says, I feel like my life is useless right now. This man's CV reads like, what am I doing, he says. He can't believe it.
Everybody is important.
Oh, look at you.
No, I'm serious.
Okay, let's go back. So you're 1.5 years old. Your folks moved to Africa as missionaries.
Right.
And they moved to the Congo. Mm-hmm. Was it called Congo then? I mean, because it's changed name like 15 times since then.
Well, in 1953, it was Belgian Congo. Before independence. Independence was June 30th of 1960. Yep. So we actually had about 7 years where the Belgians were the administrators. And then we had 4 years where Congo was really chaotic. And insecurity reigned.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
And where were you? What was that town, Linda?
We were in Linga.
In eastern Congo?
Yes, northeastern Congo. Up by Lake Albert. Mm-hmm. But my parents were teaching down in a place called Banjwadi, which is only about 60 kilometers north of Stanleyville, now Kinshasa. And then we heard the word that we had to evacuate. The rebels were taking over, using Africans as human shields. You probably heard the stories of Mateka and Ma and all that kind of stuff. They thought the bullets would turn to water. Yeah. It was a disastrous time, and unfortunately our friends were being killed and being chased out of their homes. Devastating time. And
you guys were fleeing then?
Well, we joined a convoy in a place called Rethi. And we said goodbye to our friends, our African friends. And my folks said, you can take 2 toys. And we huddled in the back of our car with things they thought were important that they packed in their suitcases that night. I'm sure they didn't sleep. We took off in the dark, saying goodbye to our friends, and then we joined a convoy that was escorted by United Nations, Ethiopian and Nigerian troops. We got to the army camp, and they pulled us all in. And they told us they were going to take the things that belonged to Congo, and so we watched as they rifled through our vehicles and took most of the things that we thought were valuable.
Oh, and then they called it Malia Congo.
Malia Congo, and it needed to stay there. And that they would take care of it. They promised that they would take care of it for us. Then we...
And how old are you? You're 6, 7 years old?
No, by that time I'm 13.
Okay.
We had evacuated twice before, but this was the big one. In 1964. You probably remember the stories of...
Patrice and...
You know, the mercenaries and Mabutu and all that stuff, Maikor and whatever. But the reality is we finally got across the border. Unfortunately, just before we got across the border, the customs official said, you can't leave with anything but your clothes on your backs and your car. And so we drove across after 27 hours of sitting in army camps at the customs officials' place, the Douane, as they called it. And then we finally got out. And as I said before, we only had our faith and our family and the friends that were with us. And it really taught me a big lesson that has stayed with me all my life, that the things that we have are not that important. And we might think they're important, and we might load them into our cars and try to safeguard them, but when they're gone, it really doesn't matter, when you come right down to it,
Yeah.
if you're alive.
The material stuff, that's what you're
right.
talking about,
That's
right?
what I'm talking
It
about.
means nothing.
And life is a gift to be shared and protected. And so to have life and to have friends and faith, that's really what it's all about. Now, Jeff, I got to tell you honestly, I didn't learn that lesson as well as I should have when I was 13, because I had to be banged on the head again with almost a near accident. I was flying from place Phoenix to San Antonio.
This is now as a fighter pilot.
This is now as a fighter pilot.
Yep.
Yes, I'm about 30 years old, 29 years old. And so you'd think that I would have learned a little bit. But during my Air Force career, I focused on being successful. And I was successful. I had a lot of plaques. I had a lot of trophies. I had a beautiful wife, a child, and everything was going very, very well. And people would say I was successful. And then I took this trip. As we cruised along, I saw the big puffy thunderstorms, but they didn't really portend that the next 30 minutes would be life-changing. As we tried to go down, I was flying in formation. The pilot in front of me was learning how to fly the F-5, getting ready for his instrument rating, and I was on his wing. And we fly 3 feet away. That's just the way we fly,
Yep.
3 feet apart and in standard formation. Then we got into the clouds, and the sun was going down. It's getting dark. It's raining. I can barely see that ghostly airplane on the side. If I get any closer, I'm going to hit him, and if I get any farther away, I'm going to lose sight. So I was really tucked in, closer than 3 feet, probably overlapped. And then he got disoriented. And he said, I've got to turn off my rotating beacon. And that little beacon, even though it was lighting up the clouds, was allowing me to see his airplane. When the beacon went off, I just had a couple lights to use as references. And then he was supposed to turn like this to go onto a new heading, and the airplane disappeared. All I saw was nothing except rain streaks on the canopy. So I rolled out and I pulled to get away from his airplane. When I looked in my instruments inside, when I put my head back in, I was like this, pointed toward the ground, screaming toward the earth, on my back, 135 degrees of bank. I watched the ground come up, the lights of San Antonio. I bottomed out between a farmhouse and a row of trees, milliseconds from being a fireball.
Oh.
Climbed back up in the clouds. I almost had to yell at myself, you're straight and level, 300 knots. You know, when we're flying like that, it's like you're locked in a closet. You can't see anything except those instruments. Your head says, hey, you're upside down or you're crooked, and the instruments are saying one thing, and you just got to force yourself to believe the instruments. And finally, I got my head back together and got rid of what we call vertigo, and was able to land.
And what was your mate? What was the other pilot? Did he make it?
He had continued turning and landed. When we got on the ground, it turns out, he said, I made a mistake. Instead of turning like this, I turned like this, the wrong way.
Yeah.
And so when I rolled out and pulled,
You were heading down.
I pulled into the ground.
Oh, my goodness.
And really, but you know, it didn't matter about all that. What mattered was that when I closed my eyes that night, I could see the altimeter winding down. I could see the airspeed increasing. I could see the ground coming up. And in addition to knowing that I didn't have enough life insurance, I realized that night that if I had died, yes, my wife would have been sad, my squadron mates would have been sad, and I would have left a room full of trophies and plaques and accolades.
And that's it.
And that's it. So that night I decided that I was going to look for opportunities outside of myself to help my community, to help mankind. And about the same time, I heard stories about Idi Amin, and aspirin cost him $5. This was 79. Idi Amin was getting ready to leave, and the country had been through a terrible time. Estimated that 600,000 people had been killed, a lot of persecution to the church and that kind of thing. And I decided I was going to go to Uganda and help those people. So I bought some tools and a ticket, and I took off. I landed there, and I was one of 13 people in the country that had my color skin. And then 2 East Germans were killed, and we were down to 11. Talk about feeling like a Malami. I was serious in Malami.
Yes.
And so, but it was, you know, the amazing thing is that every meal, we only had matoke to eat, and every meal there was a little penicillin vial with a leaf or a flower. The people had nothing, but they shared it with me. I learned so much about generosity and a caring and love and a servant attitude. And then we'd have to go hide in the cornfields when the soldiers would come through looking for their comrades or looking for supplies. And I was there with a doctor who had been trained in Germany, had a practice in Germany, but he came back. And I said, Dr. Masaba, why did you come back? And he said, if I didn't come back, who would take care of my people? That point, I said, okay, that's servant leadership. That is what I want to be.
Yeah.
Somebody who does what's right when no one's looking.
Okay, fast forward. Since you're at 1979 now, let's go to 1982.
Yeah.
And you're assigned to Nanyuki Air Force Base to train our guys on the F-5, right?
Exactly.
How was that?
It was wonderful. I mean, looking out your window at Kirinyaga every day, we finally climbed it.
Did you?
My wife had already climbed Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
But you know, what a beautiful sight. You know, that little signpost that has been there guiding people for centuries. And then to have the opportunity to fly with Kenya's cream of the crop. I mean, wonderful pilots.
They gave you a nickname, didn't they? I've heard them calling you Kamau often.
I became Kamau.
You were Kamau.
But I got to tell you, I got a name from the Maasai, Olamanyak.
Olamanyak, yes.
And I've had other names. So, yeah, but while I was flying, I was Kamau.
And then on July 31st, the week you were finishing your assignment, July 31st, 1982.
Yes.
And you were at Mount Kenya Safari Club with your family, just winding up everything to go back home.
Right.
All hell broke loose.
It did. And I got a telephone call that I didn't realize at the time was telling me that they were taking over the government. And then the sign went dead. And then we stayed up there and helped with the coordination. You know, in Nairobi here, because of the way the telephone systems were, the lines in Nairobi were down and people couldn't talk to each other. But they could call out. And we found that have you been to the Mount Kenya Safari Club? There's that little sauna outside.
Yes.
And we went there was a telephone in there, and we could call the High Commissioner, and we found that President Moi was still alive in Eldoret, and we became the hub of communications.
But there were a lot of panicking people at the club, right?
Yes, some that were offering me $10,000 to get them out of the country. Now, yeah, it was, you know, people didn't expect it. You know, and when terrorism hits, you know, it just really tilts the brain.
Yeah.
And people go into panic mode. And so I had to spend a lot of time calming people down.
But let's not forget, Ambassador, you were constantly warning the U.S. Embassy in Nairobi. You kept telling them, guys, there could be something happening here. There's something happening. And those people, for lack of, I want to say, use another word, but they kept saying everything's under control. They had it under control.
I think it's where we were getting our information. They were reading the Standard, the Nation,
Kenya Times,
the Kenya Times, and listening to Nairobi. I'm there listening to them plan the coup, and I'm speaking Swahili.
Yeah.
You know, and I said, I think somebody's planning something that doesn't sound normal.
Yeah.
And I was told that we got it under control. So yeah, you have to read the book for the rest of the story.
Yeah.
But
you have to. Yes. Yes.
It's very
But you got back to Nairobi okay after that? I mean, and left the country okay?
Yes.
Was it hairy coming back? Was it a little scary coming back?
We actually had some missionary friends that drove up to try to rescue us as we were eating dinner at the Mount Kenya Safari Club. So while it was interesting for a while, we actually were doing quite okay.
You were okay.
But then I went back. I was already selected as a White House Fellow in Washington.
Right.
So I was already getting ready to leave.
What is a White House Fellow?
A White House Fellow is a program that President Johnson came up with. And I tell you, it's something that President Uhuru wrote to think about. Because what they do is they take 13 to 19 Americans and put them in government for a year. They go to cabinet meetings, they travel, they do projects for the president, but they learn about government. And then they're supposed to take this back to industry, back to their homes, back to their communities, and to try, and then eventually, hopefully, they'll end up in government. I was very fortunate to be selected.
Out
It's
of?
60,000 applications, and then down to 2,500, then down to 150, then down to 33, and then down to the 13 that were in my class.
Goodness. And you do that for a year? Is that
Yes.
That's a rotation. Yeah.
Yes, it's a year-long program. You interview, then you're placed, and then you're snuggled up to a mentor, somebody that you follow around on a daily basis. But at the same time, we had opportunities to go to the White House, to go to cabinet council meetings. I had one little incident. President Reagan gave me some of those jelly beans. You've heard about the jelly beans, right?
Yeah.
So I had them in a very special place. And one day I came home, and I said, "Where's my jelly beans?" My wife had eaten them. So that's what I remember about that year. She ate my jelly beans.
Your Reagan jelly beans.
No, but I forgave her.
Yeah. So you met Reagan.
Yeah, oh, yeah, we worked, yeah.
And then after that was George H.W.
Yes.
You met him too?
I did, but I didn't work with him closely.
Okay.
But then Jimmy Carter worked with him closely
Before- yeah.
after he was
After he was left,
you know, left the presidency.
Clinton?
Introduced him, as you probably read in the book. Yeah. And so, again, afar, but on the security thing, when I was working on the drone, he was part of that program.
Ah. And then W?
The W or Obama?
No, after Clinton was W, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep. And yeah, I didn't really work with him too much because I was out flying for most
okay.
of the time that he
Okay.
was in government.
And then, of course, you escorted Senator Barack, and you knew he was going to be president. This instinct told you, right?
It did.
When you traveled with him to South Africa, Cape Town.
It did. You know, we were coming from a different place. I was a Republican, been in the government, been in the military, you know, and he's Democrat, community organizer, a whole different background. But when we talked,
Yeah.
it was clear that we had very similar ideas
Yes.
about where America should be,
Yeah.
where we should take the country,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And
I was in Cogello when you brought
I
it.
remember you,
I remember
Jeff.
you too.
That was an interesting
It was
time,
a great
wasn't
time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
With Mama Sarah.
Mama Sarah,
Yeah.
the HIV test. and all
The
that.
HIV test, yes, and talking to the people.
Yes.
Incredible,
Very
incredible.
important to
And
know
then-
your status.
And then the little
rest.
kids meeting their great grandmother.
Yes,
Oh.
yeah, that was special.
Oh.
That was special.
Oh,
And to be part of that trip,
yeah.
you know, because it was really, he needed my airplane because I was a general.
Yes.
But so we got to sit in the airplane together and just to listen to how he thought. I mean, one time we were just talking about, should the elderly drive? Who makes the decision? Is it a doctor? Is it, you know, somebody else,
Family
a
member.
policeman or
yeah.
whatever? And then we thought about the constitutional thing. I mean, we spent an hour talking about this, but he wanted to learn to ask the right questions and then to consider everything and come up with a decision.
Yeah.
I was blown away. I got to tell you, I'd never been with somebody who wasn't worried about what we were doing, but why we were doing it.
And then even after you were fired by the State Department, and then you met him last year, you still saw the same man, huh?
I did.
You saw the same man.
I did. He's generous. He's a great thinker. A special. I think there's a big future. I think number one, America's going to appreciate him more, especially
later.
given what we're seeing now. but I think he's going to, just like the President Carter has given back, and President Clinton has given back.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see great things, and I hope we see more in Africa from somebody like President Obama.
Yeah. Has President Kenyatta got one of these yet?
I gave him a book at the Mombasa.
Come on.
I did, and you know, I've got tremendous respect for him.
Yes.
I think that he's really working very hard. When I look at the country 3 years ago and where it is today, the railroad and the things he's put into place, I got to tell you too that Amina Mohammed, as our Minister of Foreign Affairs
Yeah.
and Cabinet Secretary,
Yeah.
has done a superb job. I mean, we're seeing senior leaders coming here from around the world. We're seeing major organizations having their meetings here, and we're seeing Kenya as the beacon. We're seeing Kenya as the mountaintop. And I'm not saying it's better than the rest, but people, when Kenya talks, people listen. And that is a big change, and I think we owe a lot of thanks to the President, to Amina, and other people around who are making a huge, big difference in this country.
Absolutely. When Kenya talks, people listen, doesn't it?
It does.
And you saw this probably 20 years ago, man. You saw this a long time ago. You just,
I did.
you just quiet, you saw this.
Kenya Kwanzaa.
Bonnie, zoom. Ebu angalia your flag.
Ndio.
Bado ako nayo, imagine.
Yeah. But this flag means more than just Kenya is #1 in Africa. It means we need to keep thinking about Kenya Kwanzaa when we think about devolution. It's not devolution. It's devolution for the benefit of Kenya and its citizens. It's not anti-corruption, but it's anti-corruption for the benefit of Kenya and its citizens. It's not a more efficient bureaucracy. It's a more efficient bureaucracy for the benefit of Kenya and its citizens. It's not better security. It's better security for Kenya and its citizens. And that's why Kenya Kwanzaa is so important for us to think. Everything we do, why are we doing it? Are we doing it for our pocketbook?
No.
Are we doing it for our county? If we're not doing it to make Kenya a better place for its citizens and for what it can do for the rest of Africa and the world, we're missing the boat.
Absolutely. Kenya first, everything else second.
True.
My man. Would you want to get a real job after this?
I have a real job. No, I'm always open to real jobs.
You need to pick up this book and listen to the wise words of Ambassador Scott Gration. What a man. True son of Africa, warrior diplomat. This book, folks, he's signing it tomorrow. Show up at Art Cafe Village Market from 11 to 3. On Saturday, Art Cafe in Karen. He'll be there from 11 to 3. Sunday, he's at Westgate. Tapas, right?
Yes.
Tapas at Westgate from 1 to 5. Get yourself a book. I got mine signed already. And I tell you, this you will not be able to put down. Great read, great inspiration, great faith, and a man who feels not just this country, but this continent right here. We're going to take a break, come back, and talk about the future going forward. What else is there left for this man? Because he still thinks there's a lot of things still ahead for him. Listen to him speak. Listen to this inspiration. Maybe he should be doing the circuits, going around talking to people. There's a thought. Keep tweeting at Scott Gration, at Koinange Jeff, the hashtag Son of Africa. Jeff Koinange live at the Villa Rosa Kempinski. Takes a break. We'll be back in a moment. I haven't used my fire extinguisher.